Welcome back to another reading and correcting of Bottom Rung by me, Kindar, the Tiger Right, and Ty, who is responsible for things happening this morning, because I'm not. Today we are doing chapter 24. Tibs spent the next 3 days barely conscious. When he wasn't at his morning lessons, or with Alistair, or with Bardic, he spent his time seated in his room staring at a tankard of water. He caught Jackal looking at him oddly, but the fighter didn't comment. Tibs sensed the water in the tankard, as well as that on his hand. But as soon as he tried to move it, he lost grasp of the sense of what was in the tankard. By the fourth day, Alistair ordered him to take a break because it was affecting the rest of his lessons. And as if his teacher had instructed Jackal, the fighter dragged Tibs out of their room to spend time at the inn. "You're looking better," the server said as he placed a tankard. "You're looking better," the server said as he placed a plate on the tankard. "Thanks," Jekyll said. Are you hearing something?" Khrushchev asked Tibbs. "I think I've been standing too close to the fire and embers flew in my ears." Tibbs looked at the exasperated Jackal and their server. "I'm not going to get involved in this. I have too much to do already." Khrushchev winked at him. "And that marks you as the wise one of the team." "I said I was sorry," Jekyll grumbled, and the server headed back to the kitchen. "You think he's going to be mad at me for long?" "You think he's going to be mad at me long?" Tib narrowed his eyes. "I don't know, and I'm not getting involved. It's just, I didn't know that it was a special day. We've been—" "Jekyll?" Tib said. "Yeah?" "I don't want to know, but Tibbs glared. "You pulled me away from my practice. I'm not exactly in a forgiving mood. You need a break. You're walking around like one of those undead monsters from stories. Just with this meal, you're looking better, just like Crow said." And okay, here I'm changing it. Just like Crow said. "Fine," Tips grumbled. "It's just so hard, and I want to get it. You're not going to tell me what that is, are you?" Tips shook his head. "You and Krosef? We're friends. Like you and the merchant's daughter?" Jekyll chuckled. "Not quite." Tibbs nodded. "So you want to fix that with him? So, so you want to fix that with him?" He made sure not to react to the approaching server. Jekyll shrugged. "I'd be happy with just talking. I'd be happy with him just talking with me. If he isn't interested in the rest, that's his choice." The slap on the back of the head barely made the fighter react. With a curse, Krosef shook his hand. "I know you're hard-headed, but did you have to be literal about it?" He dropped in the chair next to Jekyll. "Sort of? Are you talking to me now?" "Of course I am. Just pay attention when I tell you stuff that, like what days are important to me." "In my defense," Tibbs took his plate and tankard and stood. "Where are you going?" Jekyll asked. Out of Jekyll. Out of striking range." "I'm not." Jekyll looked at Krosev's darkening expression. "In your defense?" the server asked. "I'm an idiot?" Jekyll offered. Tibbs sat back down. "What day was it?" Krosev studied Jekyll, who gave him as innocent a look as he could manage. Tibbs would have to give him pointers. He was trying too hard. "It's called high wind. Back home, it marks the first day of the melt, when the wind comes from the sea and sends everything flying that isn't nailed down." He smiled. "It's beautiful. I wanted to go back for it, but Dad needs me here, so I asked Jack here, it's Jackal," the father said sharply, which earned him a glare, "to stand with me in the field so we could measure ourselves to the wind. And do you think he was there?" "Can we go to the field?" Tibbs asked. Jekyll looked hopeful. "It's within the town's limit," Khrushchev said. "I'm sorry," Jekyll said again. "I'll make it up to you. I have no doubt." "Crow!" the innkeeper yelled. "Get back in the kitchen. You have work to do." "And I have to go back to being a slave." He squeezed Jekyll's arm. "Be safe in the dungeon, okay?" "We will." Tibbs raised an eyebrow. "If you'd bothered checking the schedule, you know we're up this afternoon." Tibbs rolled his eyes. "I have looked at it. It isn't like the stuff from the dungeon Ahem. Pa. I have looked at it. But it isn't like the scribbles on there mean anything to me. You don't even know your name? It's Tibs, the written version. Jekyll shrugged. Jekyll said. Tibs shrugged. I didn't know that was something. I'll show you. I'll show it to you on the way to the dungeon. When they arrived at the waiting area, the adventurer stared at them, then glared. With a yell, he sent another one running to the town, then went back to glaring at them. Next time, pick your own team. We can do that? Tibbs asked, which only made the adventurer, a fighter in chain mail with a metal staff and grey eyes, stare at him. Tibbs noticed those on a lot of adventurers who wore metal. Ah, Did I start updating my list? Keep meaning to and never really doing it. Which I know now is not exactly the time, but metal. And blood gray eyes. Starting to notice those on a lot of adventurer who wore metal. If we can, Jekyll said, no one told us. And do I look like your mother? He asked. And I need to, at this point, I need to. Do I look like your mother? The adventurer asked. Jekyll barely stopped a snortle. No, definitely not. Then don't expect me to tell you everything. You're a grown man. He looked at Tibbs, then back to Jekyll. Well, you are. So you can figure out those things for yourself. Stay here until your team's full. He left them alone. At the equipment table, containing okay. At the equipment table, containing good-looking guild equipment, which the few runners walking by ignored, Bardic looked bored. Tibbs considered going to speak with him, if only to confirm if they could form their own team. He didn't trust any other adventurers, but he recalled that the other rogues said about being noticed together. It was one thing to run into one another in town, but unless he was going to buy something from the guild, he had no reason to be at the table. At that table. In the distance, he saw an adventurer return with 3 people in tow: a woman fighter, an archer, and a man in robes that were almost black. Even in the distance, Tibbs felt sick as they locked eyes. The sorcerer stopped, and after arguing with the adventurer, turned and headed back the way they'd come. That's a first, Jekyll commented as the adventurer grabbed a sorcerer who was headed back and pulled her along towards them. That was Dawn. You don't want him on our team. The adventurer left the 3 by Tibbs and Jekyll and grumbled about self-entitled runts and doing things Tibbs didn't wish even on someone like Dawn as he headed away. The fighter wore armor in a mix of leather and bronze. Her eyes were a flat gray. And you know what? Flat metal gray. The archer's eyes were the same odd color shifting that Tyrannia's eyes were, and the sorceress's eyes were pale blue of air. Were the swirling pale blue of air. So let's update that. Flutter, swirling pale blue of air. The three studied them as intently. The fighter looking at Tibs longer and not looking impressed. I've done the dungeon, she said, so if you do what I say, we're going to be good. Last time, my team almost beat the boss. Apparently, we need to clarify something, Jekyll said. Me and Tibbs are the team. You're helping us. Don't worry, the split's going to be even, but we don't take orders. I listen to opinion and experience, but in the end, we make the decision. He fixed the fighter. If that's going to be a problem, we can find someone to replace you. Not if you want to keep your spot, Mr. High and Mighty, Bardic said. You're going next. He looked at the crack in the mountain. Although it might take a bit, the runs are taking longer now. But if you leave and you aren't back before this team exit, whoever's after you goes, and you have to wait until your next turn comes around. You have to wait for your next turn to come around. He looked at the crack again. And something tells me that you'll be waiting a while. Before Tibbs could ask the adventurer what he meant, Bardic laughed, not even giving him a nod of greeting. I won't be a problem, the fighter said. I didn't mean to take over. I'm just used to running thing. I'm the leader of my team. He's the leader, Tibbs said, indicating Jekyll. You could be the leader, the fighter protested. Tibbs snorted and indicated everyone looking down on him. Who's going to take me seriously? You're Tibbs, right? The archer asked, which earned him a cautious look from Tibbs and Jackal. Radcliffe and me are the only one left of our team. He told me about you. Well, the only ones left from our team. He told me about you. If you had bad things to say, Jekyll stated, keep them to yourself. No, no, the fighter raised his hand placatingly. He said you did something with your water to unlock a door, and that after that the adventurers said there were 4 rooms. He said you're the ones who found out about it. He is. Jekyll said he found it on a previous run, actually, but that was before he had a way to open it. What water? The fighter asked. His eyes are brown and the normal kind of brown. Tibbs almost missed the woman's comment. He was trying to remember if Jackal or Radcliffe. That's one that survived a long time. Had been on that team. He didn't think they had, which meant he'd been on a team with someone who had, and they talked. Jekyll looked at him. You want to show her? With a shrug, Tibbs formed a pool of water in his hand. How? My teacher says the eyes always tell you about someone's affinity. Tibbs sighed. It's my age. I'm so young, my teacher says I'm not fully into my element, or something like that. It's why I can't do a lot with it. You're still alive, so you can do plenty, the fighter said. So, you and Radcliffe are a team? Jekyll asked the archer. Jeff. And I'm not sure. With only the 2 of us, it's probably going to depend on if they put anyone worthwhile with us on the next run. I think you can pick your own team now, Tibbs said. When we got here, the adventurer was unhappy we hadn't. You sure? The fighter asked. I'm Pian. If he's right, I can use an archer on my team. Radcliffe is a rogue, right? I already have one. I'd like to finish dealing with what's going to affect this run, Pian. Jackal said, unless you mind. Sorry, she replied. What's your element? I've seen those eyes before, but never got to ask. What's your element? Jekyll asked. I've seen those eyes before, but never got to ask. Crystal. It's more practical than you think. Not arguing, Jekyll replied. Every element has value to someone who knows how to use it. He turned to the sorceress. And you are? Karina. Air sorceress, but you can tell that. I'm not on a team, if that's your next question. I was like Jeff, but Tandy was offered a position on the last team she rounded up. Are you okay with to do this run? Jekyll asked. It looked like you were leaving when the adventurer grabbed you. I'm good. I was just I was just here walking. The town gets stifling after a while. Tandy? Pian asked. Rogue, this high? She raised her hand a bit higher than Tibs was. Karina nodded. I'm sorry. I'm the one who grabbed her. It's okay, the sorceress said. At this point, I think it's going to be tough for someone not to have at least heard of someone else, let alone work with them. Does anyone know how many of us are left? I know it started with around 4,000 people, Jeff said. Tips didn't bother asking for clarification and simply decided that it was a lot. He remembered the crowd and how everyone had pressed against each other in the field. We're definitely nowhere near that anymore, Jekyll said. Not to put pressure on you, Karina, but you can consider this your audition for our team if you're interested. We already have a, we already have a team room paid for, and this run will let us add at least uh, will let, will let us add and the rest of a month at a minimum. If we survive, Pian said. We will, Tibbs ordered. Tibbs right, Jekyll continued. I have nothing to prove. The moment we don't think we have a chance to survive the next encounter, I'm pulling us out. If you have any doubt, I pull us out when if you have any doubt, I pulled us out when our sorcerer died in the trap room without any coin to speak of. If you're more interested in pushing your luck until you die, tell me now. They all shook their head. Disfigured, the overly greedy and impatient one, had all been eaten by the dungeon at this point. So here's the plan. Tibbs gets us to the trap room. If there's a cache, he gets the content and we decide who gets it. Something for a specific class goes to that person, no argument. Something more general we can discuss. Claire? Da, 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 da. Okay, I don't have to cover it because at this point actually they started no they haven't. Okay, at this point, yeah, at this point the runners are getting away with a lot of stuff. All right, the boulder room is simple. Me, Pion, and Tibbs will draw the rats out of hiding by standing in the room. Karina and Jeff take as many of them out when they're on top of the boulders. We kill whatever they can't. Once it's clear, we collect the coins when Tibbs holds on to them. Don't argue, he told Pian, who closed her mouth and blushed. He has a coin pouch, and if you don't trust a rogue by now, it isn't something I'm dealing with. The Warren room, what about the key? Pian asked. We have Tibbs, so there's no point in trying to find it, Jekyll said. We don't have to search, she said. I know where it is, and so long as four of us survive the boulder room, we can get it. I'm not saying I don't care if someone dies, she cut Jackal off, just that it only needs four to unlock. It's the four boulders at the corner of the room. You can turn them at the same time, and it opens a compartment in the central pillar with the key in it. Tibbs looked around in case one of the adventurers could overhear them. Tibbs looked around in case one of the adventurers could overhear them. When he confirmed it was safe, Jekyll was looking at him. The rats have always distracted me, Tibbs said. All right. We get the key and move on. The Warren room is simple if we're careful. The three of us rush the rats. You two take the rabbits that come for us. No need to kill them on the first shot. The point is to keep them from us. Question? They shook their head. All right. Has anyone here killed the boss? As far as I know, no one has, Karina said. Pia nodded. Yeah, the day that happens, I don't think they'll be able to keep it a secret. What do you know about the room? Jekyll asked. We didn't try it when Tibbs found it. That whip arm hurts. Pian rubbed his shoulder. Pian rubbed her shoulder, and it has reach. Haven't seen it. I haven't seen it bother defending itself because it can reach anyone anywhere in the room from the center of it. Actually, that's easy to deal with. All you need is to blind it. It's a golem. It can't be blinded. It can, PN replied. It can. Whatever the rule in the dungeon are, the golem has eyes, and they're set up that if you destroy them, it doesn't see anymore. That's how we managed to get out on my last run. I got in a lucky shot and blinded it. I lost a teammate as we ran, so we couldn't keep the coins we found, but it could have been worse. Is it real stone? Tibs asked. Remember how easily the rats could be cut. As much as it needs to be, Jeff said. But the stuff in the dungeon doesn't always behave like what it looks like. I haven't gone up against it, Karina said, so I don't know how it'll react to air attacks. I asked around, but no one would give me detail, claiming that secrecy thing adventure in force. So Jeff blinds it, and we hit it as hard as we can and hope we kill it? Jekyll asked. Best plan I've heard of yet. A few minutes later, the other team exited, bloodied, tired, but all 5 of them. Their defeated expression said they hadn't beaten the boss. And this concludes chapter 24 of Bottom Rung. If you're enjoying this, please subscribe and hit the bell. Hit a thumbs up and share with your friends. If you want to read the story, you can do so on Royal Road. The link is in the notes, as is the link to my Patreon, should you want to support me and make writing more of these easier. And with that, I will wish you a good day.